You're 5 times more likely to die by suicide than a workplace fatality. All this workplace fatalities combined, so electrocution, falling from heights, confined space, add up all those, you're 5 times more likely to die by suicide when you're a construction worker. The biggest problem I see is the stigma, admitting that, that you might have an issue and you might need some help, because that expresses vulnerability, and typically that's preyed upon in construction culture. Everybody's just sitting in their silos with their boxing gloves on, waiting for somebody to cross the line so they can punch them in the face. Not literally, sometimes literally, but figuratively. We didn't prepare the industry to accept those people, and it's created a huge mess.
This is like what I want for our industry. I want problem solvers.
When you drop your guard down and tell somebody, I don't know, can you help me? That's a huge connector there. The way I've always looked at it is, I'm not going to screw somebody on this job that's going to prevent me from getting the next one and the next one and the next one. Because same as you, I've been doing this 20 years, but I'm going to be doing it 20 more.
Thanks for doing this, man. And I bet you're a busy guy, and just been following you for a little while and was really excited to get you on here. So appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you reached out before, and I forget if I either didn't respond or late responding. But anyway, I know then you reached out again on a post. I don't know. I just like having these conversations, man, because when I started posting, sharing my thoughts a couple years ago, I thought I was the only crazy one. But it turns out there's lots of us out there who want to do better for the industries. Yeah.
Yeah,
Happy to chat.
It's exciting for me to find people like you too, because it is funny. I've been in this industry for almost 20 years now, but just over the past 5 have started to try to be vocal about the ways I want it to change publicly. And it's like you start to meet other people that are also struggling with some of the same things. And it's like, man, I should have reached out to the community a lot earlier. Well, cool. I'll just get started if you don't mind. Welcome back to Constructive. Special guest today, Angelo. You got an awesome YouTube, Instagram. You're on LinkedIn too, but human side of construction. And I've just really enjoyed your messages and wanted to see if we could have a fun talk about the state of the construction industry. I'm kind of coming at it from a tech optimism approach, and very into the technology side of how it can help us in the construction industry. I've been project manager in a bunch of different areas of construction, but now I'm just trying to figure out ethical and great ways for tech to help the humans in construction do it easier. Let's get right into like the stuff that really fits your branding, which is, I want us to talk first about mental health in our industry. I think my audience is probably all aware it's a problem, but we kind of avoid talking about it most of the time. Do you see that too?
For sure. That's probably, there's a lot when you try to crack that nut and get into it. But at the heart of it, I think the biggest barrier people are facing now is the stigma around it. Because I know when I was a kid growing up, mind you, I'm probably a little bit older than you. I turned 41 this year. So when I was growing up, there was quote unquote crazy, and there was like, normal. There was no spectrum. And what you associated crazy with was somebody, that had mental illness. It was locked up basically in a mental institution in a straitjacket. So you didn't want to be associated with that. So you just kind of compartmentalize and suppress all the stuff that's going on in your life to fit into this normal box. And now I think people are realizing that there is no normal. Like there's a whole spectrum, and largely we're in an awareness phase, I think, globally, but, especially because construction, we're predominantly a little bit slower to adopt new things, whether it's technology or socially. And so anyway, the biggest problem I see is the stigma, admitting that, that you might have an issue and you might need some help, because that expresses vulnerability. And typically that's preyed upon in construction culture.
So true. Fun. I'm glad that you think that I'm a good amount younger than you. I turned 41 this month too. That's funny to me.
Nice. There you go.
But yeah, let's back up. I kind of want to hear some of your story. Do you mind just telling me, like, did you get into construction early on as a kid?
Yeah. So I don't know, it's kind of cliche, but I say I didn't choose construction. Construction chose me. My background, mechanical engineering. So, but even before that, like I remember my parents were Greek, right? They came to Canada. They're both Greek. And like any Greek Canadian, they ended up in the restaurant industry. Don't ask me why, but a lot of people did. And yeah, so they ended up owning a restaurant and they worked there for 20 years. So I started washing dishes when I was 13, worked my way up to short order cook. I worked there for about 10 years before finishing school. But anyway, I remember even before I started working there, I was probably like, 9 years old. And I was sitting in the back of the restaurant with my dad and I was looking up to him, like any young kid does. And I said, Dad, wouldn't it be cool if I took over the restaurant one day? And looking back now, what I thought was going to be this sweet sentimental moment. And I remember the look on his face. It was not sentimental at all. And he goes, no, you're going to school. You're going to work from the neck up. I'm working like this so you don't have to. And I think a lot of people in our generation were told that, and they were said, go to school, get a degree, college, university, whatever, get a diploma, get a degree, and that's your ticket to a six-figure job and a white picket fence, the American dream. And, fast forward, I realized that was all a lie, but they were just doing the best they could as parents, right? They wanted to provide for their kids the opportunities they didn't have. So I ended up going to university because my parents wanted me to go. I remember sitting with my guidance counselor in grade 12, and I said, my parents want me to go to university. I don't know what program to take. She said, well, you're good at math and science. How about engineering? I said, sure, why not? Let's do it. So anyway, I kind of made it through the 4-year program. And then I graduated like anybody thinking, I was going to get a job as a consultant. I took mechanical engineering, so I was going to be a mechanical engineer, be a HVAC designer, whatever. And be making all this money because I'm this big professional. And then reality hit me pretty hard because it was in the mid 2000s, coming out of a recession, and jobs, it was kind of tough to come by a job. So I was basically running out of money, living off of hot dogs. And I was like, you know what? I got to find something. And so I started applying to random places and ended up at a mechanical electrical construction firm. And then, the rest is kind of history. I started as a coordinator and I kind of graduated up into more senior type roles, did a little bit in estimating, did a little bit on the owner side, predominantly on the specialty trade side in mechanical. And now I'm director of operations for a mid-sized mechanical outside of Toronto here in Ontario. And yeah, that's kind of the professional side of things.
What made you that? And I know you skipped through a lot of career stuff. Maybe I'll dig into some of that later, but I also want to just get to the what made you decide you had a voice and you wanted to share some things publicly, and when did that happen?
So again, going back to when I was a little kid, I always thought I was kind of weird because I thought about things differently. Like I remember partying with my friends and yeah, we were having a good time, but I remember thinking like, these are the experiences that I'm going to remember, like hanging out. And I remember being in the moment and just thinking these, philosophical or existential thoughts when I was like 12, 13, 16 years old. So I always kind of had that in me. Maybe it's in my blood from being Greek, whatever, I don't know. As I got into construction and I started to fall in love with the industry and my career progressed and my experience, so did my frustration with the way it operates. Because early on, I figured out pretty quickly that it's a very technical field. All the training is hard skills. You need to be kind of hard-nosed, negotiate, business mindset, transactional. But a lot of the issues I saw were at the fundamental people level. Miscommunication, not knowing how to deal with your emotions, not knowing how to resolve conflict. So I saw these issues on site, and then I started to get to know more senior people, executive level directors and higher. And the one skill that stood out with them the most is they were just genuinely good people, and they knew how to manage others. And the stuff they were dealing with were people issues. So I quickly realized it was a people industry. And as I kind of progressed and started to notice, hey, there's a trend here, that frustration started building up. So it was partly that and partly the pride in the industry. And there's so much good about what we do, whether it's design or construction, that almost gets swept under the rug and is hidden behind the stigma of like the rough and dirty and tough construction work. So what that ultimately led to was, it was one random LinkedIn post. I think it was like July or August of 2022. Never had intentions of starting like try to be an influencer or posting regularly. And it was basically to that effect. It was a hospital project that we just completed. I had this moment where I left and it hit me where, we built something that's going to last way after I'm dead. It's going to serve this community. People are going to go in there and have life altering experiences, have babies, lose loved ones, get treatment. And, us as a construction team, the 400 or 500 people, each did our part to building that. And yeah, it sucks sometimes, and the construction industry can be shitty, but we do really cool work. So basically a shorter version of that in the post, and it got a ton of engagement. Considering it was like my first post, it had a couple hundred likes and a bunch of comments. So I was like, shit, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's like more that people want to hear about. So I started posting a little bit more random thoughts, and then it became less random because, like, when you put content out there, you see what people are engaging with, and you kind of follow like a path of breadcrumbs. And sometimes you hit a brick wall, but sometimes you find like a little gold nugget and it takes you out into
Yeah.
something else. And that really spawned to, the human side of construction. So since then, I've put out quite a bit of content, written a couple books, have an online course, started to get into speaking engagements. I've done a bit of coaching, and it's just really cool to see where this stuff can take you. Like you said, just, sharing your thoughts and seeing who you attract, basically. Does that
I
answer your
had
question?
something.
I don't even
It
remember what your
does.
question was.
No, it's perfect. I was basically like, what led you to start wanting to talk about this stuff publicly? And you did answer that. And it gave me a thought because I just had a recent experience like you were talking about where I was just helping my mom do some renovation at her house, or watching it happen actually, and watched her try to get quotes for a door replacement, and had a really expensive team come and pitch to her and try to sell her a $15,000 sliding glass door with all kinds of bells and whistles and lifetime warranties. And she's kind of like, wow, do you think that that's like all I'm? And I was like, no, we need to get more bids, and we
Mm-hmm.
should just like find somebody we get a reference from, that, someone around town. Like, and it was
Mm-hmm.
actually someone through our church that came, and he looked at it and he's like, yeah, I can replace this door for you, and it won't be anywhere near that price. But like, he did a couple other things around the house and then went back to the door and just started looking at it, and he's like, I can fix this. And because there was a bunch of things that she didn't like about it. It was
Mm-hmm.
squeaky, it wouldn't really close all the way, and it was getting really old. But he's like, look, this is a door that had a lifetime warranty, and I can fix it for you. And like in 15 minutes he had it
Mm-hmm.
to where it was functioning well, and basically didn't really charge her too, and it
Mm-hmm.
was just like, she was blown away and so excited about this guy that now she uses him for every project she can think about. And I got home that night and I was just like, this is like what I want for our industry. I want
Yeah.
problem solvers. I want people who come in and talk to the owner, listen to them, and figure out, okay, what really is going on? Why did you call me here? Now, here's a $15,000 door, lady. Do you
Yeah.
want to buy it or not? I'm leaving if you don't.
Yeah.
And I posted that. And I had posted a bunch of stuff before this, like thinking about search engine optimization
Oh,
and
yeah.
use the right hashtags and tag the right people. And this post took off. And I was like, interesting. Like, I didn't that was actually just a personal story that
Mm-hmm.
impacted me. But I think the takeaway I'm getting is that's what LinkedIn is craving, is like actual human stories. And I feel like that
That's
might be able to help our industry.
Well, it's funny you say that because I hear all the time I hate to use the term content creator or influencer, but I guess it's what I am, at least a content creator. People say, oh, the algorithm this, the algorithm that. The algorithm isn't some evil person behind a curtain twirling their mustache. It's just, it knows what people want to see and it pushes it out. And people want human connection. They want something they can relate to. They want something that validates their experiences, and they want authenticity. Okay. And this goes for social media, but it extends beyond social media into relationships with other people. Like, that's what people want. And so I used to think the internet, social media, Instagram, all this stuff was just pure evil, because you always see like the best of people's lives. But what I've realized in posting authentic content like that, storytelling is a huge element of connecting with other humans. That's what people really want. And that's what makes them feel good. Right. And it might not be the same as like, oh yeah, I really want to be that guy. It looks like he's doing so well. But when somebody can say, wow, I feel like I really connected, this guy or this girl really understands me. I really respect them and I want to, hear more from them. And, this whole social media thing aside, That's how you build relationships with people. You get to know them. And going back to your story and how it's analogous to the construction industry, I think it's super relevant because what I've noticed, even in the 20 years I've been doing it, it's so transactional. People are both sides, owners and contractors, subcontractors. Everybody is so worried about their own scope, schedule, and budget that they're just afraid to go outside the boundaries just a little bit because they've been burned or they've been told by somebody in their office that who had been burned and had a bad experience. Everybody's just sitting in their silos with their boxing gloves on, waiting for somebody to cross the line so they can punch them in the face. Not literally, sometimes literally, but figuratively. But where does that get us, man? And I think what's causing a bigger issue and exacerbating that is we're getting away from from the people who managing the project actually knowing how the work gets done. Because a lot of people take the path I did, where they're an engineer or an architect, super smart people that might get into a project management role, good at knowing the design, knowing the drawings. But when it comes to solving an issue on site that involves means and methods, how the nuts and bolts come together, they don't know because they don't know the experience. They don't want to admit they don't know because that'll look like they're weak to the other person. They'll have a leg up. And then it creates this huge fight. But guess what? Nobody knows everything, And I found that when you drop your guard down and tell somebody, I don't know, can you help me? That's a huge connector there. But for some reason, people don't like to do that for whatever reason. I don't know. Maybe it's protecting their ego. I don't know how
It's
deep into
actually
psychology you want to get, but
No, I love it. It's actually my wife's least favorite phrase that comes out of my mouth is "I don't know." And there are sometimes when I'm using it as an excuse not to talk about something. I think that's
yeah,
what she's talking about. But
yeah.
I've also always felt like if you think you know anything, you don't know enough.
Mhm,
Like I just feel
mhm.
like the more I know, the less I think I know. Does that make any sense to you?
Yeah,
It's like humility just comes with knowledge, I think. And
for
if you
sure.
know enough, you'll understand that you're kind of stupid.
Well, I think it's a Greek proverb, if that's what you want to call it. I think it was Plato or something, but he said, like, one thing I know for certain is I know nothing for certain. Like,
Yeah.
it's that. And I think that's what's helped me get so far in my career is I just have a learner's mindset. I'm curious about learning about things and people, ask questions. Not so many questions like a toddler, like why this, why, like, no. But if you genuinely show interest and say, hey, we're talking here, Seth, like, lots about this topic. Can you tell me about it? You're going to feel pretty good and you're going to want to share that with me. So I'm going to take that knowledge that you're willing to share with me and I'm going to form a connection with you because you're like, yeah, Angelo's interested in this. And I like that. And it makes me feel important. But like, it's these little things that our people innately crave as human beings, like the base of our reptilian brain, that people don't know about because we're not taught. All we're taught is how to issue an RFI, how to track a budget, how to, you know what I mean? Follow this standard operating procedure. But all the in between, like the ether that this stuff exists in, is what really matters. How you're connecting and interacting and communicating with people. I feel like I'm sounding too weird now, buddy. I don't know. Stop me if I'm.
Loving it. Storytelling too, you mentioned, and I just think it's something we all got to learn, myself included, because I think emails should tell a story. I think an RFI should tell a story. A change order should too, as boring as they are. But how do you think we help our industry get better at storytelling?
I think a lot of it, we talked about mental health earlier. I'm going to give the same thing here. It's just awareness, because a lot of people, I think you're taught a certain way, and that's just how you're almost brainwashed, and that's how your brain is wired into doing. Taking a step back and explaining the value of that storytelling. Because when you say, okay, well, what is storytelling? It's the details: who, what, when, where, why, how. Right? Any story, whether you're talking about the hero's journey with whoever going to Ithaca or like Harry Potter, or you're like you said, you're writing an RFI or change order. All those elements are the same. There's a who, there's a what, there's a why, when, and a how. So hitting even just those five things is maybe a good kind of rough guideline. But I think with any type of, essentially we're talking about change management, right? Because you're like, how do you convince people to see?
Yeah.
By doing that, you have to manage the change of how they're used to operating to how might be more beneficial. So I think the first step is, explaining the benefit to them. Like, what does this look like in the bigger picture? What are you going to achieve by doing this? How is it going to make your life easier? That's how you're going to get people to buy into whatever type of change.
What do you think it's why is it hard to create an atmosphere where mental health matters on a job site? And like, is there something working against us in terms of like psychological safety? And how do we break down those barriers on a job site? Because it just feels like there's something different on a job site.
So this isn't shameless self promotion, but to answer your question, if people listening and yourself after, you can go check out the pinned post on my Instagram because it got 2 million views and it talks about the suicide rate in construction, how you're 5 times more likely to die by suicide than a workplace fatality. All this workplace fatalities combined. So electrocution, falling from heights, confined space, add up all those, you're 5 times more likely to die by suicide when you're a construction worker. And then I go on to explain some elements that might contribute to it. Like there's definitely socioeconomic factors. A lot of people who end up in, especially in certain trades, probably didn't have the best experiences in life. They're probably carrying around past trauma, whether it's abusive households, addiction, things like that, quote unquote, never really had a chance. And you've got another tranche of people who, maybe didn't have that type of experience, but their brains are wired a little bit differently. Divergent, neurospicy, whatever you want to call it. So they didn't succeed in the traditional schooling system, the way it was set up to cater to a certain type of learning and a certain type of brain. So they were always told these messages either implicitly or explicitly that they're not smart enough, they're never going to go to college or university, they're not going to have a chance, so they're going to have to just end up in blue collar. So they were pushed into that direction, into the industry, whether it's, mechanic or construction, wherever. And then you're put on a construction site with a type of culture that you kind of alluded to. And, a lot of times they barely have washroom facilities. I've got messages from people who work in residential that are basically have to shit in a box. Like they don't even have bathrooms. And even
Wow.
construction sites, they're lucky to have a portage on. They don't have hot water to wash their hands. They're eating lunch on the back of a pickup truck or whatever, like not even facilities. So they're treated basically like animals. So you're taking this population that's already at risk for things like addiction, substance misuse, gambling, all these things, and you're putting them into very questionable situations. And then it's like, well, then you wonder why we're having all these issues with things. So anyway, that was the post. It had 2,500 or 3,000 comments, and it was about half and half. Half of them were like, you got soft hands, suck it up, grow a pair, whatever. And there were 50,000 other people that liked the post and didn't have a negative comment. So it's those people in the comments with those stupid comments that is working against what you're talking about. So you talk, what's the barriers about there is no psychological safety, because if you share something and express vulnerability, you got guys like that who are probably 1 out of 10, the minority, but they're the loudest voices. And they jump down your throat, and because they got their own issues that they don't know how to deal with, so they're projecting on people like that. So you're like, okay, well, this isn't a safe space, so I better not share mine. I'm just going to suffer in silence, and I think that's the issue.
Right.
A lot of times.
There's this other side of it too, where these are also the people who are making our physical world, our infrastructure, all the things that we need in order to have the lives that we have to be built. And some of these guys are artists, and I think also the buildings we build, they never say the name of the people that built it on the side of them. They say some company's name who bought the building. And
Yeah.
do you have answers for that? How can we give more recognition to this craft? And also, how do we hype them up? Because now I think those careers are very important. I think as AI gets better at doing those white collar jobs, I think some of these, we're going to need people in the blue collar jobs, even if robots are going to help us, right?
Yeah. No, for sure we're going to need people. I always thought it was funny because you see on projects how there's like a beam signing, right? Like the last beam that goes in, everybody writes their name and they're part of the legacy. But that beam gets buried in a friggin' penthouse that nobody's ever going to see. So it's a nice gesture, like you said. So I might have a bit of a different take on that, but I think from people I've talked to, not a lot of people want recognition. They didn't get into the industry for a pat on the back. When I pose questions on social media about, what do we need in the industry, overwhelmingly, it says we just want to make more money. We just want to be able to provide for our families, which I think is a very good point. Because like you said, Mike Rowe, I'm sure you've heard of him. There's a lot of advocates out there for people getting into skilled trades, but I think they're going about it the wrong way because they're saying,
Hmm.
"Oh, you can make a ton of money." So people are coming in thinking, "Yeah, I'm going to make six figures." Like Mike Rowe said, I was going to make six figures, and you get in as a first year apprentice and you're making minimum wage,
Right.
and you're doing shit work that
Yeah.
you're probably better off flipping burgers for that same rate. Now, you as time goes on and you graduate through the apprenticeship, yeah, then you're going to start making money. But in the beginning it's can be a bit of a challenge. So I think I went a little off topic there.
Do you think there's a way to raise the floor? Like, make it so that all these people can make more money?
I think the answer is yes. It's always an option, but it's got to come from somewhere. So whether it's some combination of, it's got to come from the owner side. Okay, so whether it's a combination of government subsidizing rates plus owners willing to pay more, general contractors less willing to just fight tooth and nail to get the lowest bid. I think a lot of times the industry does it to themselves. And that's what capitalism is all about, man. It's making the most amount of money with the least amount of resources. So there's a greed factor to it for sure. So it's definitely not as easy as saying, oh, yeah, well, you just got to pay these guys more money.
Yeah. I'm wondering if I just hate the whole, I mean, probably every industry is like this, but it feels like labor arbitrage at every level where it's just, if I'm the owner, I'm paying for this person who's marked up someone else's labor rate, and it just keeps going down further and further with all
Mhm.
these markups added. I just feel like there's ways to use technology to cut out some of these middlemen. And I'm hoping at some point we get the owner and the builder closer together. Do
Yeah.
you think that that's possible? And do you think tech will help us do that?
I think tech will help on the project management or construction management side for sure, and hopefully cut out some of that middleman. And it's always, I always kind of chuckle because coming from the MEP side of things, I've done a hospital where, between the mechanical, electrical, and the IT, it was half of the job, literally value, half of the project. So, and I'm thinking like, at this point, why are MEPs even a subtrade now? Like they've got more skin in the game than the actual GC or construction manager. I get at that level, you're just managing risk and you're not actually doing the work. But, all of the risk is on the specialty trades who are doing the work. Why is that middleman taking such big of a cut? That might ruffle some feathers, but I don't know. So, in terms of the actual task of a GC or a construction manager, is basically to manage the contract and manage the scope and the schedule. Definitely managing the contract and managing the schedule can be automated to a certain extent because there's technologies out there that'll monitor tasks and do trend analysis better than any type of human. And monitoring the contract is just, were you supposed to do this scope? Yes or no? Like it's black and white. So I think that could be uh,
Percent.
automated to a certain extent, but I
Do
think
you
it'll be
think
pretty interesting.
I agree. Do you think we need to, as a construction industry, invest in marketing? Just because I do. I feel like we have a marketing problem. It's such a cool industry. I think if you could make it look cool and we don't. Do you agree?
Yeah. So this is an interesting topic. I agree and I disagree at the same time. I
Good.
agree wholeheartedly that we need to do better marketing because the stigma against construction workers is that it's dirty and it's tough. And, you know, I'm sure anybody who's not working in the industry, if you close your eyes and say, what does a construction worker look like? They're going to tell you, like, white guy smoking a cigarette, sitting in front of a concrete truck, probably catcalling women. Because that's what you see in the movies and in the news or whatever. But that's not what the industry is, man. So, in that sense, yes, we need to do a better job marketing. But what I think is happening now, and I'll even go so far as to say it's a hypothesis, is that all this, I'll call it stuff because I don't have a better word for it, all this stuff we're doing now to attract younger, underrepresented groups, women, BIPOC, people of color, all this like different types of people in the industry, it's actually bad because the industry is not ready to accept them. Because what I've heard from a lot of younger people is that I was told I was going to make all this money, but I didn't know that construction culture was like this. And I was going to have to put up with these old guys hazing me and harassing me. Same thing with women. Like you're saying, yeah, we need more diversity in construction, which at its core, diversity and inclusion is extremely important. But when people see it as a check the box exercise and they say, oh, you're just here because you're a woman or you're a person of color or you're indigenous, we didn't prepare the industry to accept those people. And it's created a huge mess. So before we get to the marketing and bring a bunch of people in, I think we need to fix the culture issues that we're experiencing right now that we've already kind of alluded to. Does that make sense?
I do. I think I agree with you too. I mean, it's a hard place to be, even for someone who fits in. I never felt like an complete outcast, but I'm like you. I've had a very creative brain. So, in that sense, I never felt like I fit in this industry. But at the same time, I can act and look like one of the guys, and I still have a hard time with the culture. So, I agree
Yeah.
with you. It's like, even now today, and I think it is getting better. I've been in the industry 20 years and I do see a lot of change, but I would agree with you that we have to be honest still that we're if you come into this industry now and are hoping for perfection, you're not going to find it.
Yeah.
Well, tell me about like leadership development. You're in a leadership role. How do you pick the people? How do you see leadership skills and how do they get developed in this industry?
So the biggest leadership skill, and I kind of alluded to it before, it's just understanding how people work, right? Like even when you're in project management, you're not really managing projects, you're managing people. And how that's developed, I know I've been in some bigger organizations that have like, management development programs and they teach things like soft skills and whatever. But that's like a very small percentage of actual companies and people. So a lot of people, it's you're left to your own devices, buddy. Like, people like you and me who kind of naturally gravitate more towards that. I think we've got a bit of a head start in that sense. But I've seen, time and time again where a lot of times in construction, especially in the field, you have somebody who's very technically strong on the crew and they get promoted to foreman because they're, the best technically. But it's like a sport. The best player doesn't make a good coach. Michael Jordan, Wayne Gretzky, there's probably a bunch of other examples too. And the differentiator is understanding the people skills. Yeah, you need to know the technical details. You need to know the bare minimum of like how things come together, the team you're managing. But more importantly is how the people are doing the work, how they're interacting with each other. Because when you're in a leadership position, you're managing a team, and a team is just a bunch of individuals interacting with each other. Because you could have, I've seen a lot of cases too where you have a very strong team as individuals, but for some reason they're just not performing because they don't know how to communicate. They don't have leadership. They don't have a person steering them in the right direction. So everybody has a seat on the bus and they know they're all facing the same way. They all have the same map. They know what direction they're going and they know their part in the puzzle, how it fits together to achieve the bigger vision. That's to me what leadership is, painting that picture.
Do you think that honesty and humility and integrity are going to win in this industry? And because sometimes I get discouraged, like it feels like trying to be an honest, humble person of integrity might not lead to success.
That's a very good question. So my thoughts are if you are a business owner and you think you are going to run a successful business and especially in construction, say as a mechanical contractor, that's just not how the business side works. If you are within a company, like a larger company, I think that's going to help you get ahead. That's going to help you get promoted faster, get noticed. But in terms of running a business, for the reason we talked about before, about the transactional nature, and it's pretty cutthroat. Unfortunately, nice guys don't win, buddy. That's in the world of business. That's just how she goes.
Well, yeah, I just think there are ways to
Is
win
that
that
too
are
cynical? I don't
ethical.
know.
I just think there are ethical ways to cheat, if that makes any sense. And I'm
Mm,
trying to push people in those directions. And I think, too, even if I lose because of my integrity, I'm willing to do that because I think the long view is somebody's going to remember that guy didn't lie to me, even though if he had, he would have won that job.
yeah,
And I think maybe I get 10 jobs later because of that. So
yeah,
that's my goal. It's just sometimes I do feel a little depressed that it's like you gotta cut corners or win by any cost, you know?
yeah.
And I think I'm rejecting that.
I think a lot of people operate under that assumption that, "Oh, I have to make as much money on this job as I can." Like
Hmm.
if you're a project manager and you've been assigned a project, yeah, that job has to be successful. The way I've always looked at it is I'm not going to screw somebody on this job that's going to prevent me from getting the next one and the next one, and the next one. Because same as
Yeah.
you, I've been doing this 20 years, but I'm going to be doing it 20 more. So to me, it's not worth making an extra, you know, 50,000, 100,000, 200,000 on this specific job if it's going to sabotage a relationship that's going to stop me or my company from winning the next one. So in
Yeah.
that sense, yeah, honesty, integrity wins from a relationships building thing. But if you look at it as a zero sum game, which a lot of people do, whereas there's only so much to go around, and if I don't get it, somebody else is going to, so I'm going to take it all. It's I think that's where the cutthroat scarcity mentality comes from, and is pretty detrimental. One good thing I will say is I have noticed it is changing. I think society is changing. The younger generation, like us millennials and younger, we just kind of operate differently. We value different things in life, and especially the younger generation, it's cool talking to kids who are like not even that focused about money. Maybe it's because they're still like living with their parents and they haven't felt the stresses of like a mortgage and kids and stuff, but they
Right.
really value morals, social causes, environment. No, that conversation wasn't on the table 20 years ago when we started working, you know?
True.
So, so I think, yeah,
Well,
it is changing.
everybody should go buy The Human Side of Construction, Angelo's book, and check out him on LinkedIn. I'll put some links in descriptions as well, but plug whatever you want, Angelo. How do you want people to find you?
Yeah, I think the best thing, yeah, LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook actually surprised me. That's getting pretty popular too. Basically, all major social media platforms. Check it out, Human Side of Construction. And just hopefully we're making the industry and the world a better place.
Thanks for doing this and hope to stay friends.
Yeah, appreciate it.